Welcome to the PreSnap Podcast presented by LineStar. We've got your AFC North preview alongside my co-host, Tyler Wiemann. I'm Shannon, Sommerville. We've also got season-long player prop bets that are available on Underdog Fantasy. If you don't already have the Underdog Fantasy app, make sure to download it. Use the promo code LineStar when you do, and you'll get up to $100 of your first deposit match. So make sure to check that out. Tyler, I'm very excited to talk about the AFC North because as we were chatting a little bit right before we started taping, we were both like, this is a very interesting division this year and perhaps one of the tougher ones.
Yeah, a lot of things will, show how this division goes. A lot of different teams could, kind of surge to get better, and some interesting changes are going on. And so I really do like it. And, there's a bunch of decent quarterbacks in this division, so that always helps.
It's going to be a good one. We'll go over the win totals that we think each team may go over or under. We'll talk about their futures odds for various championships, Super Bowl. We'll talk about all of that, plus our favorite player prop bets that you can get for season long on Underdog Fantasy. So we will have that. We've got a lot of great quarterbacks to talk about, Tyler, as you were alluding to in this one. I feel like every year with the AFC North, it always ends up being like towards the end of the season, it's almost like it's everyone is still in the race. Somehow even the Steelers are somehow still in the mix for the playoffs by the end of the season. It's always a kind of crazy thing. It's like in Mario Kart, when they're all like kind of like hitting each other with shells and, the whole thing. So I kind of feel like this could be another year where it's like that Mario Kart race at the end where they're shooting, the little turtle shells off and knocking each other off.
Somebody's got the red shell.
Exactly.
Somebody's got the red shell to knock it off. I know. It's exactly what's going on here.
And one of those teams that could knock everybody off is the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll just start off with the favorites to win this division. They are also, I believe they have the fourth best odds to win the Super Bowl behind the Chiefs, Eagles, and Bills, which is kind of crazy when you think about how much success they've had over the past couple of years. And plus 130 to win the AFC North, plus money to win the division. That seems kind of wild to me and just shows you how competitive this division is. Let's go over some notable offseason moves here. We've signed offensive tackle Orlando Brown, which I think is a huge move here for the Cincinnati Bengals. If you watched any of their games, Joe Burrow was always under a ton of pressure, so that significantly helps. On the defensive side of things, they got safety Nick Scott and cornerback Sidney Jones. They also signed tight end Irv Smith Jr. because they had parted ways with Hayden Hurst. They drafted defensive end Myles Murphy, and they did also get wide receiver Charlie Jones from Purdue. He had 110 catches with just 3 drops last season. Not a whole lot of flashy moves. However, this is a Bengals team that got better. What is your assessment of where things stand in Cincinnati?
Yeah, well, one of their major weaknesses was that offensive line. So they partly, brought attention to that to help bolster that line. Another thing is that I think it is kind of interesting, the Irv Smith deal. So Irv Smith at tight end, he's been a guy that has been on everybody's radar for years now, where this guy could have a breakout season. He has the athleticism. He has some of those intangibles, but injuries keep getting in the way. If he can stay healthy with a quarterback like Burrow, it's really interesting. So although it doesn't seem like huge, flashy moves, I think they are moves in the right direction.
So from a fantasy perspective, we got a lot of great fantasy studs on this team. Jamar Chase has been going top 5 in most best ball drafts right now. Do you have any favorites in terms of fantasy value right now?
Well, I mean, obviously you got to bring up Chase, but honestly, all of the pass catchers in this on this team are very interesting. You have Burrow, who Burrow could take another step forward this year. And so I like Higgins. I like Chase. I like Boyd as a later round wide receiver. And then I think Irv Smith is very, very interesting as a tight end you can get, pretty late in the draft with the Bengals upside. Also, I know we talked about on the sleeper show, there's Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is still probably going a little too late. And I would not be surprised if he gets into, early third round in best ball drafts in another month or so.
So on Underdog Fantasy, they have some season-long player picks available. Where are you headed for one from the Cincinnati Bengals?
I'm going to go with one of the guys I just talked about. We're going T. Higgins, higher than 1,000.5 yards, receiving yards, that is. Look, he's been over in the last 2 years with missing time. Not much has changed on this team. It's just another year of Higgins and Burrow getting better and both taking another step forward. So I think 1,000 is just a little too low. The only thing that's really going to derail this is a serious injury where, he's missing over, I would say, five games or so, maybe 6.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Bengals offense as a whole is you know what they're going to be doing every single week, and that's getting that passing game and that explosive passing game going. And teams try to stop it, but it's just one of those things they just what's coming, and it's going to be deep shots down the field to from Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I mean, it's just it's predictable, but they can still do it even if defense is playing for it. It's like they just can't stop them.
They may be leaning into it a little bit more. I like to look at the offseason moves to try and figure out what might be coming. And at running back, they lost Samaje Perine. They didn't really get somebody else to replace him. So, and I don't know if somebody they have on the roster can replace that. So does that mean they might lean on the passing game a little bit more this year? I think it's an interesting kind of idea and, very possible.
I have a prop that I absolutely love from the Cincinnati Bengals for Joe Mixon, the running back, over 1.5 receiving touchdowns. He had 2 last year, and he has, in fact, gone over that total 3 of the last 4 years. He only had 1 in 2020, but that's because he only played 6 games that year. No Samaje Perine this year. Jamar Chase is number 1 on the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of red zone targets. But guess who was number 2 last year? It was the Cincinnati Bengals running backs. Joe Burrow loves targeting his running backs in the passing game, and I think that Joe Mixon gets there.
Yeah, his value is definitely rising quite a bit here, but I like this one. As we mentioned, there's no Samaje Perine. Big part of Perine's production last year was through the air from dump offs to Burrow. That's right now going to be all Mixon.
The other hesitation that some people have with him is he's dealing with some off the field legal issues that could sort themselves out. Is he going to be facing a significant penalty? And as you mentioned when we talked about him in our undervalued fantasy players, you expected, Tyler, this to maybe play out a little bit similarly to how Alvin Kamara did. The league usually doesn't weigh in until the courts have. And in this case, I think they probably will keep that same approach as we head into the 2023 season. So I don't think a suspension comes down anytime soon. And I just still like this bet a lot. I like Joe Mixon a lot. And so hopefully, he becomes RB1 and helps you guys win some fantasy teams. I don't know. I've seen some people even saying that they think he might be last year's Josh Jacobs. I did see that recently.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference in that. I mean, Josh Jacobs last year was being drafted in 8th, 9th round, and had never really had that RB1 type production and just kind of came out of nowhere, even though everybody knew that he was going to get the majority of the production. But I like your take with Mixon. Also, that court case situation, it's a weird one because the file or the charges got filed, then got dropped, and then came back. So I think we're in big time limbo here. And I doubt we're really going to see anything through most of this year or all of it.
All right. So the win total for the Cincinnati Bengals is set at 11.5. Tyler, do you have any thoughts on if you're going to say over or under? For me personally, I just want to preface this all by saying I am not getting anywhere near any of these win totals for the AFC North. But, for argument's sake and the sake of entertainment on this show, I am going to probably lean over here. What do you think?
Yeah, I would absolutely lean over here too. And I'm with you. I wouldn't go towards the win total. look, if you do think they're going to be over 11.5, you might as well bet that they win the AFC
Yeah.
North.
Yes.
So at plus 130, I would rather bet that than bet the win
Yeah.
total.
That 100 that makes total sense there. There's just a lot of unpredictability in the entire division there in the AFC North.
Yeah.
You got Deshaun Watson, who we'll talk about in a bit as well in there. We don't know what that's going to look like. So let's go to a team that we also are getting a big quarterback in, and that's the Baltimore Ravens, who last year finished the season 10-7. They have the 8th best odds to win the Super Bowl, 2nd best odds to take the AFC North at plus 250, win total set at 10.5. Of course, the biggest move this offseason was getting that deal done with Lamar Jackson. The $260 million man gets paid on a 5-year deal. They also signed his buddy, wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., now giving him a real weapon at wide receiver. Cornerback. They also signed cornerback Rock Yassin and Trayvon Mullen, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, and they drafted wide receiver Zay Flowers from Boston College. And, of course, the biggest move of them all, getting Todd Monken from the defending national champions in college football, the Georgia Bulldogs, getting their offensive coordinator to shake things up on offense. Todd Monken comes over to Baltimore. Tyler, what do you think about what the Baltimore Ravens did this offseason?
I really like what they did this offseason, and I think there's going to be big changes to this offense. This team is one of my teams I'm most excited to see about and the changes they've made. Think they're going to go to a much more downfield approach, throwing the ball. Maybe they won't rely so much on the run, and I think it's a really exciting situation for the whole passing game.
How do you see the wide receiver situation playing out? This is a difficult one to predict because they got so many new pieces, and then you add on top of that an entire new offense that we're going to be looking at. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting wide receiver room with a ton of different variables. Like, one, is Bateman really healthy? Is he healthy enough to really carry the offense? Right now, I would say probably not. What about OBJ? Is he fully back? And how back is he? Is he going to be like the Rams playoff run? Or did he lose another step? So there's variables with OBJ, and then you have the rookie Zay Flowers, which normal rookie variables with that, and with that all that added competition. Does Mark Andrews take a drop in targets, but maybe gain some efficiency? So I think there's so many different ways, and you can analyze this team and different variables to really understand what's going on here. But it makes it really, really interesting with fantasy because a lot of these wide receivers are going fairly late. Mark Andrews is going later than he was last year. But look, if one or two of those wide receiver gets hurt, then you're talking about the one healthy remaining guy is probably going to get a ton of volume. And for a quarterback that is really good and can buy his receiver some time to get open.
One of the players that I talked about with Dr. David Chow, the Pro Football Doc, if you haven't watched that, make sure to do so on our YouTube channel. We went over all of the injuries with fantasy players, and one of the guys he was very high on this coming season, Odell Beckham. He's very high on his overall health, and he thinks he could be in for a nice year. And especially with Lamar Jackson, I know he doesn't, everyone kind of knocks the passing game there, but I think under this new offensive coordinator and Todd Monken, you really start to see maybe even some of those MVP-like season numbers once again. I think that is very much in the cards for Lamar Jackson this year. How do you see Lamar Jackson's overall play for the 2023 season?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's definite MVP possibilities here. Not only is he a dynamic, rusher, but he also has a really good arm, and I think he's a much better passer than most make him seem to be. And look, we never really have weapons for Lamar Jackson. Right now, it looks like he has weapons. So I think it's very exciting, and I think pretty much all the Baltimore Ravens are going too far down in fantasy drafts. So I'm trying to get as many of them as I can right now.
Nice. All right. Where are you headed for a season-long pick on Underdog Fantasy this season from the Baltimore Ravens?
I'm going with Lamar Jackson lower than 82.5 rushing yards. Look, I know I talked about Lamar Jackson, that I love him, and there could be an MVP season and all that, but I don't think his rushing yards are going to be higher than 82.5. He hasn't played more than 12 games since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I think that there's going to be a concerted effort to keep him from running as much. He's going to run. I just think 800 is too many. He's been lower in 3 of 5 seasons, and with Todd Monken and them trying to pass a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
I just expect he won't have the attempts to get him over that 825.
For my pick, I'm going to Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. Love this play here for over 800 receiving yards. Yes, I know he will have very stiff competition for some targets with all of those new weapons for Lamar Jackson. However, last season in 2022, he had 847 yards playing 15 games. He's gone over 800 in 3 of the last 4 years, and that was in a run-first offense. Todd Monken, their new offensive coordinator, he knows a thing or two about how to utilize tight ends. Case in point, Brock Bowers with the national champion winning Georgia Bulldogs. He had 942 receiving yards. And then Darnell Washington also had 454 receiving yards. So he knows how to utilize those tight ends as weapons in the passing game. He might even be a wide receiver one, essentially, for Lamar Jackson in this one. So I think the increase in volume should make up for the competition for targets here for Mark Andrews. Loving Mark Andrews this year, the over here on 800 yards, and also in fantasy as well. What's your assessment of Mark Andrews?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark Andrews is in a really interesting spot. He's probably going a little bit later than he should in best ball drafts right now. I mean, I like the passing game here as a whole, so all the pieces are very interesting to me. And the one that I have been kind of fading so far is Bateman, just because of so many injury issues,
Right.
that I just don't know. And there's so many variables with him and the offense. I've been staying away at where he's been drafted.
Well, their win total 10.5. What do you think about where that line is, and would you lean over or under?
So this is another one that I probably wouldn't bet. And if I was going to
Right.
bet on it, I would probably take the AFC North at plus 250 over the
Yep.
win total.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if they're getting to 11, 12 wins, they have a super good chance to
Oh,
win
yeah.
the division as it is. And so
Definitely.
with that, I would lean to betting the AFC North.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pick, I would probably go over here. I think the changes to their team
Yes.
are probably good. And this offense got better than it was. The defense probably got better as well. So I like it.
All right. Let's head to Cleveland. The Browns are 2,800 plus 2,800 to win the Super Bowl. 9.5 is their win total, plus 390 to win the AFC North. Notable offseason moves for the Cleveland Browns. Dalvin Tomlinson on the D-line. They traded for Zadarius Smith, traded for wide receiver Elijah Moore from the Jets. They had given up, remember, the first and second round picks with the Deshaun Watson trade last year. They did draft wide receiver Cedric Tillman from Tennessee in the 3rd round. And they also let Kareem Hunt walk in free agency. So some things to consider there for the Cleveland Browns. And this is one of those teams that, Tyler, to be quite honest, I have no idea what to expect from the Cleveland Browns, because a lot of that centers around how Deshaun Watson will play this year. Last season was shaking off a bit of the rust after dealing with that season-long suspension or that long suspension. So what are you anticipating for the Browns?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns have a very talented roster. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to be terrible. And a lot's been made about how bad Deshaun Watson was last year. But if you remember, he dealt with some really bad weather games. He had some tough teams, not to mention just coming off a big layoff of playing. So
Yeah.
I think we have to give him a little bit of a pass for that. Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't good, but he did
Right.
start getting better towards the end of
Yeah.
the season, and I think that will continue. Do I think he's a top, say, 3 quarterback? Maybe not even a top 5, but I think he is a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. And so I like the situation. And there's another passing game that I think's probably being a little underdrafted.
All right. So we're liking a lot of these pass catchers for the Cleveland Browns for a good reason. Where are you headed for a player prop? Is that, in fact, where you are headed? Is to one of those pass catchers?
It is. I actually have 2 different player props that I like here.
Oh,
We're
bonus.
going to
Like
go
it.
with Amari Cooper higher than 87.5 receiving yards. I think this is just disrespectful. He's only 29 years old. It's not like he's over the hill. And every year that he's had a decent quarterback and avoided injury, he's had over 1,100 yards. So, I mean, last year he had 1,100 with Jacoby Brissett. He now gets
Mm-hmm.
Deshaun Watson. I don't care, what you think or what people are saying about Watson. He is better than Jacoby Brissett. Cooper's in a great spot to get over 1,100 yards or 875.
And then what's your bonus?
Bonus, David Njoku higher than 3.5 receiving touchdowns. He's been higher in 4 of 6 seasons. That is including a year that he only played 3 games. His best situation he has ever been in and the most involved he's ever been in the offense is right now. And he was getting 4 touchdowns before that. So I love the 3.5.
Okay, one of my favorite season-long player props on Underdog Fantasy, Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, higher than 3,625 passing yards. He had a terrible season last year. Passer rating when he returned was 79.1. It hasn't been below 98 before that in the last few seasons. And he finished with 1,100 yards in 6 games. That was his absolute worst. That is bare minimum to expect from Deshaun Watson. It was the last full season, though, in 2020. Remember, he had 4,823 passing yards. He's got Amari Cooper. He's got Elijah Moore. He's got a full offseason. And when healthy, this offensive line, remember, too, is one of the best in the NFL that he's playing behind. And he's playing in a division with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, where he's going to have to air it out in a lot of these games against such great passing and electric offenses. I like Deshaun Watson here to hit that over on the passing yards. Win total for the Browns at 9.5. What do you think about that win total?
I mean, in this division, I think that win total is real tough.
Yes.
As you said, you're not betting any of these win totals.
Nope.
I mean, this
it.
is another one that I would probably stay away from too. But I probably wouldn't bet the win AFC North at plus 390.
Yeah.
I think this win total, if I had to bet anything, I would bet under just because of the strength of this division.
It's just such a tough division. It's really tough.
Yeah.
All right. Lastly, let's go to Pittsburgh. The Steelers have the worst odds to win the AFC North at plus 470. Their win total is set at 8.5. Notable offseason moves for the Steelers. They acquired wide receiver Allen Robinson and cornerback Patrick Peterson. They also drafted Broderick Jones in the first round and tight end Darnell Washington in the third round, both UGA grads. So they got quite a few Georgia Bulldogs, which as a Georgia Bulldog grad, I'm a big fan of. However, overall as a team, they've got a lot of work to do, Tyler. How do you see the Pittsburgh Steelers entering the 2023 season?
They're a really interesting team because we see so many changes with their defense. If TJ Watt is healthy, he's expected to be fine to play, so their defense could be okay. But when he's out, they've looked horrible. Not to mention they still have a second-year quarterback who is definitely the worst quarterback in this division. But he is a guy that I think will make a step forward, and I don't mind, in best ball drafts getting some Kenny Pickett and stacking some of these Steelers.
All right. So from a fantasy perspective, there are a couple interesting pieces. Does anybody stand out to you in particular as somebody worth looking at in best ball or season-long fantasy?
I really like Deontay Johnson, and I have been, when I do get him, I've been trying to stack him with Pickett and then maybe Freiermuth. Also, I've been going after Warren, the backup running back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big Najee Harris fan.
Mm-hmm.
I think his efficiency is not very great, and I just don't want to support that where he's being drafted.
All right. So that being said, where are you headed then for an underdog fantasy prop pick for the season long?
I'm going with Deontay Johnson, higher than 87 or 875.5 receiving yards. He's been higher in 3 or 4 seasons. He beat this number last year with a rookie quarterback. Now it's coming into Pickett's second year. He should take another leap forward, should be a little bit better, and be trusted to throw a little bit more. If you remember, they had some games of really, really low passing totals, and I think that changes this year. I think he has the ball in his hands more, and Deontay Johnson's probably going to get the ball quite a bit.
He sure is. And you know who else is going to get the ball quite a bit? And this is one of my favorite player props for the 2023 season. I'm going with former Georgia Bulldogs, George Pickens, higher than 775 receiving yards. There's no Chase Claypool this season to compete with for targets. Yes, they brought over Allen Robinson. However, he's 30 years old. He's missed a lot of time due to injuries. And in 2022, Pickens had 801 receiving yards, averaging 57 receiving yards per game over the last 5 games. So if the law of averages tells us we should hit the over here. Also, his 57.1% contested catch rate ranked 13th in the NFL. He also had the 3rd highest average depth of target last year. I'm just praying that the offensive coordinator for the Steelers, who's been under a lot of heat, finally realizes what a weapon he has in George Pickens. We did see flashes of greatness last year. There was a little bit of inconsistency throughout the season, but towards the end of the season, Pickens was super reliable. Like I mentioned, those last 5 games, he was averaging at least 57 receiving yards per game in those last 5, so I think he's finally starting to get it. You also remember a couple of years ago, he suffered from an ACL injury, and a lot of times what we've seen with a lot of fantasy players is they have the season after they're recovering. The first season back is kind of like getting acclimated, but then the next is like a blow-up season, and I think George Pickens is in for a blow-up year. I do understand the hesitation with some people might have with that offense in general, being the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, they're trying to run the ball, and Matt Canada, not my favorite offensive coordinator. He gets a lot of criticism for his lack of creativity on the offense. However, I still think George Pickens can do it. The Pickett to Pickens connection is real, so I am hitting the over here on that receiving yards prop. What do you think about how George Pickens fits into this Steelers offense?
I mean, I think he's going to be a key piece, and we know the Steelers like to gather wide receiver talent. It's just another case where they're doing. Pickens is incredible talent.
Yes.
Let's just see if the Steelers can make use of it.
Exactly. That's the key there. I do think still that number at 775 is kind of low, regardless of who's calling the shots at offense coordinator. I am surprised that Matt Canada was still on. I do think he gets a lot of heat as the offensive coordinator. If you talk to any Pittsburgh Steelers fans, they will moan and groan about Matt Canada as offensive coordinator because it is a very lackluster, boring offense at times. I do think, though, that the ones that are calling the shots aren't necessarily Matt Canada. I do think sometimes it's Tomlin that's kind of pulling the strings there, and he just kind of takes the heat for it. However, I do think they need to do a bit better of a job with Kenny Pickett, especially getting him into better situations to be more successful. They've got a great defense, and so if they can just put something together on offense, I mean, this could be a team to contend with. As crazy as it is, they have the longest odds to win the AFC North, but their record with TJ Watt when he is healthy, 59-26-2. Last season when TJ Watt was in the game, I mean, he's a game changer, a game wrecker. One of the few players in the NFL who can earn that honor. And hey, he'll get them into the games. And even last season, we saw them towards the end of the season, very much in playoff contention. This is kind of always one of those teams that is never really out, even though personnel wise, you might look at them and say, I don't know. But Mike Tomlin always gets them competitive.
And it's just crazy how much Watt means to that defense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember another situation where one player meant so much to the defense.
Absolutely. You think about both Nick Bosa, but even, the 49ers just have so many guys that can kind of step up in those roles. But when you're talking about, the Steelers, I kind of think a little bit about Quinnen Williams with the Jets and how much he can impact the game there. But as far as he is the heart, Micah Parsons, just the heart and soul of that defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and very much their season basically, according to the stats, basically rests on his shoulders, and they certainly know it. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have always had a great defense over there. So an interesting one. 8.5 for the win total. Seems a bit high for me, Tyler. What do you think?
Probably a bit high for me as well. And it's once again that I wouldn't touch it. If I had to, I think they could go over 8.5, but I wouldn't. I just don't. I think most likely they're right around 500.
Yeah. There's just still a lot of variables that I can't. This is a fun division now. The AFC North is always a fun one. I'm so excited to see Lamar Jackson in that Baltimore Ravens offense, as we talked about. And I think it's going to be fun. And even, Deshaun Watson and the Browns, seeing what they come with this season.
Yeah, this division just has so many variables trying to predict it, which, makes it interesting. We don't know what we're getting with Deshaun Watson. Don't know what we're getting with the Baltimore offense. Is Kenny Pickett going to, take a step forward? So I like it. It's a fun one.
Who do you have coming out as the winners of the AFC North?
I think you have to go with the Bengals. However, the Ravens have a very good shot. Injuries have really been derailing them the last couple years. If they can stay healthy, they have a real chance at winning the division.
All right, here's why the Bengals are winning the division. I just think they have been so consistent over the past couple years. Yeah. The offense is super explosive, and let's not forget their defense is pretty good too. Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, is one of the best in the game at halftime adjustments. He is able to shut down opposing quarterbacks. As you've seen, he slows down Patrick Mahomes. That is not an easy task by any means, and I think I like the Cincinnati Bengals. I know that it's very popular to pick the Baltimore Ravens, I think, because of all those shiny new toys that they have over there. And, of course, Lamar Jackson could be in for a huge season as well. So I do like that pick as well, and easily could be swayed that direction, especially because they got my former offensive coordinator at Georgia over there now to call the shots on offense. I love that pickup for them. So I could get behind the Ravens. However, I'm going to take the Bengals here.
I think you have to go the Bengals here picking, and the whole reason is the Ravens just have a way more a chance of injury or chances of not taking another step forward. And with that, I think the easy pick is the Bengals. The Ravens could do it though.
Absolutely. So another fun one to recap. Remember, we have some other recaps that you can check out. The AFC and NFC East previews are available. Make sure to check out our YouTube page. Make sure to like this video if you're enjoying our content. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, or the LineStar YouTube channel, and make sure to comment below. Let us know who you think is taking the AFC North and what other videos you'd like to see us cover as we get ready for football season. We got fantasy football coming out. We've also got some best ball drafts coming up. So we'll have a ton of content coming your way about how to capitalize on those best ball drafts, about how to get ready for your fantasy and who to watch for, who's being undervalued right now. We'll go over it all on our LineStar YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe here. All right, AFC North. We'll see what happens here, Tyler. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Let's get it. Good luck, guys. Bye.